Hello, class. This will be our lesson on Foucault's Panopticon. More a lesson on looking specifically at some strong lines. Okay, so I want to think about Foucault's Panopticon. We've already went over his biography, his context, the videos. Pretty informative, but he is one of the most powerful social theorists of our time. And I really like this unit. It's really one of my favorite units in talking about not only the Panopticon, but looking at two works specifically that represent, in my opinion, Foucault's understanding of what the Panopticon embodies, and that would be James Baldwin's Going to Meet the Man and Jordan Peele's film Get Out. Okay, so as I said before, just a quick reminder, we are going to build, and the essay prompt will be live here soon. I'd like to fine tune it just a bit, but it's already written. I've taught this before in the last couple of years. But resemblance claim, what we're going to do first is we're going to build a resemblance claim, right? Not in how Baldwin and Peele resemble each other. That's way too simple for a critical thinking course. What we're going to be doing here instead is establishing how they resemble or represent Foucault's Panopticon, right? We talked about this word criterion. Okay, if we build a criterion for Foucault's Panopticon, how then do both of these resemble that criterion of what a panopticon embodies? Okay, so the goal of this is to first, and what we're going to be looking at today, establish what a panopticon is, right? And then in the essay, we're going to build a final evaluation claim, which really makes us critical thinkers, in my opinion. This is going to fulfill in the class what I feel is critical thinking, right? Getting to not just saying, hey, these are comparable, these are, McDonald's is better than In-N-Out or whatever. No, we need to get into that evaluation claim. What makes it critical, right? How they both embody the panoptic realities, as I call this unit, but more importantly, our evaluation of what is the stronger representation of both pieces. Okay, so let's take a look here, right? As I said, we've discussed the biography of Michel Foucault. We understand this is from a book of his titled Discipline and Punish. Okay, this is a small excerpt, right? This is a pretty dense reading, right? I don't want to have you read the whole of the chapter because I don't think it's necessary. I think this excerpt encapsulates what we want to get from the Panopticon, okay? But to make it easier, I do want to go through the specifics of it just a little bit. And what I'm going to do here, and the way I'm going to run this lesson specifically, is I'm going to do what I asked you to do in your discussion post, and that's namely look for some strong lines that stand out to you. So I'll read this kind of similarly in what we've done in the past, but I also want to stop and highlight some of these strong lines as well. Okay, we can start off by thinking Bentham's Panopticon is the architectural figure of this composition. We know the principle on which it was based. At the periphery, an annular building at the center, a tower. This tower pierced with wide windows that open to the inner side of the ring. Okay, have a handy dandy picture here. You can kind of see what we're seeing here. This is the watchtower. These are the cells, right? This annular well is a circular kind of distance between, but we'll start seeing that this is the floor plan basically of a panopticon. This is not Bentham specifically, but this is a simplified version, and I like this picture here. I didn't add it to our lesson on Bentham and his history, but this gives you a nice visualization of what the physical manifestation of the panopticon was. As I said, Bentham did not see this built in his lifetime, but there were actual panoptic prisons built. And kind of an interesting side note, they didn't really work too well. We'll kind of think about that as we go along here. Okay, so we see here Foucault starts off with this understanding of the physical manifestation, the blueprint, if you will, of the panopticon. Okay. He goes on to say all that is needed then is to place a supervisor in a central tower and to shut it up in each cell a madman, a patient, a condemned man, a worker, or schoolboy. Okay, so specifically here, I want to stop and I want to look at these words here. Madman, patient, condemned man, worker, or schoolboy. For me, this stands out because not only is Foucault interested in the prisoner aspect, he is making this wide-ranging and all-encompassing. The madman, the patient, a condemned man, a worker, or schoolboy. This is a theme we'll see throughout this, right? That when you have the idea of the panopticon, it is not limited to prisoners, but any person in society that you would wish to have control over. And this is what we're going to think about, okay? Let's move on here, right? By the effect of backlighting, one can observe from the tower standing out precisely against the light the small captive shadows in the cells of the periphery. They're like so many cages, so many small theaters. Like that word there, let's sit with that. Small theaters, right? So it has to do with visual representation in which each actor is alone, perfectly individualized and constantly visible. This word here, individualized, is important for me, okay? Individualized is specific because that kind of, on the flip side, if we don't have, if we have only individuality, what we're lacking there is either community or commonality, okay? Disconnect is important for the idea of panopticon. So if you're taking notes or thinking about this in a different way, as I said, we are building a criterion for what a panopticon is. Okay, a criterion for the panopticon will establish, okay, what a panopticon, how a panopticon is defined. This is important because in this essay you will be asked, or you will be tasked, to teach what a panopticon embodies. Part of it is this, right? There must be a disconnection for a panopticon to work. Okay, so this is what Bentham envisioned when he created this blueprint, right? This kind of an individualized lack of communication, and we'll discuss this here as we go along, right? Let's go here. The panoptic mechanism arranges spatial unities that make it possible to see constantly and to recognize immediately. In short, it reverses the principle of the dungeon, or rather of its three functions: to enclose, to deprive of light, and to hide. Okay, this is a great metaphor here, and this is a great visualization. Foucault's a master at this, right? If we have a dungeon, what does a dungeon mean to do? It's to keep you underground, separate from light, kind of trapped. The panopticon is a different type of prison. You are not trapped, right? In the dungeon, you have what ability to maybe steal the keys. Like think of like Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. That dog where you're trying to steal the keys from, right? Here, and he ends it with a very powerful quote. And I want you to really sit with this because he says visibility is the trap. Okay, so instead of this kind of hidden dungeon away from the world, on the flip side in a panopticon, you are made, I would say, hyper visible. In a sense, you're never invisible. That's the goal of the panopticon, is you should know psychologically that you are always being seen. Okay, let's move ahead here. I'm going to kind of jump through just because I want to keep this, short and sweet and give you some of the strong lines that stand out to me. I'm going to jump down here and as I said here about communication, right? We talk about the prisoner, right? We look at this. He is seen, but he does not see. He is the object of information, never a subject in communication. Huge line there, right? Establishes what I'm saying here. If he's never a subject in communication, right? Communication is absent, That is the key of the panopticon. You do not want your prisoners in any facet talking to each other, okay? So we can think about that more so as we go along here, right? But what I want to look at also is this idea of lateral invisibility, okay? The arrangement of his room opposite the central tower imposes on him an axial visibility, but the divisions of the ring, those separated cells, imply a lateral invisibility, right? So you understand there's prisoners next to you, but you'll never see them and never communicate, okay? We can move down here. The goal of this here is described here. If the inmates are convicts, there's no danger of a plot, an attempt at a collective escape, the planning of new crimes for the future, bad reciprocal influences. If they are patients, there's no danger of a contagion. If they are madmen, there's no risk of their committing violence upon one another. If they are school children, there's no copying, no noise, no chatter, no waste of time. If they are workers, there are no disorders, no theft, no coalitions, none of those distractions that slow down the rate of work, make it less perfect, or cause accidents. Okay, here, this is where Foucault is diving into the theoretical. Okay, he's moving beyond Bentham's physical structure and making it more of a social cultural phenomenon. And I'll be honest with you, this is something we still see to this day. Maybe where you're reading this now, I don't know, maybe it's not home or whatever, but if you're at work or wherever you work, or if you have worked in the past, there might have been a surveillance camera. Okay, this is important, right? How different are you if you feel like you're being watched? How different are you if you feel like you're constantly watched? And like I said, I always share in my classes. I had a job where I've been bartender in my whole time in college. I was a bartender. I had instances where my manager stood behind the bar, you best believe I was a different bartender when I had my manager back there, right? It's the same here. If I felt like I was being monitored every minute I taught, would I cuss as much? Would I dress differently, right? It's a different, different dynamic when you feel like you're being watched, okay? But here, more importantly, this is where Foucault is letting you know, hey, this is not just a phenomenon that is directed towards prisoners. This is culture. This is why. This is kind of prophetic in a sense, and this is before this was published in, I believe, the this. Let me see here, in 75, right? So we see here he was pretty prescient. He was pretty prophetic because there wasn't too much surveillance back then, right? Now it's constant and everywhere. Okay, let's move ahead here. Let's go down to the next page, right? So I want to think about this idea of. We can go to page 1000, right? So the crowd, a compact, let's back up here. The crowd, a compact mass of locus of multiple exchanges, individualities merging together. A collective effect is abolished and replaced by a collection of separated individualities. This is what the Panopticon is aiming to do here. Separated individualities that are disconnected, that can never plan a heist, that can never rebel against the teacher, the boss, etc. Right? This is what a Panopticon wishes to accomplish here. Okay, so we think about that here, and we kind of can wrap, or let's go to the next page here. And Foucault brings it home here, hence the major effect of the Panopticon, to induce the inmate in a state of conscious and permanent visibility. I definitely would underline this here. Conscious, they understand they're being watched, and permanent visibility. It's never broken. That assures the automatic functioning of power, okay? We're going to come down here. When you think about this automatic functioning of power, okay, you also want to think here, this architectural apparatus should be a machine. That's an important word. I wrote that on the side of my document here. For creating and sustaining a power relation independent of the person who exercises it. Okay? This is exactly what we're thinking about here. This is a machine that does not need to be constantly reminded. Once you have a successful Panopticon, we're building a criterion of what the Panopticon is. It becomes this machine that is automatic. What do we say here? Automatic functioning of power, right? This is where the theoretical comes in, right? So the blueprint doesn't matter as much as what Foucault is discussing here. More so, it is the idea that you are always being watched, always in a constant state of surveillance. Okay, let's move ahead here. I'm going to kind of jump around or kind of try to finish this in under 15, right? The power should be, where are we at here? So we're in the middle here, okay? In short, the inmate should be caught up in a power situation in which they are themselves the bearers, right? To achieve this is at once too much and too little that the prisoner should be constantly observed by an inspector. Too little for what matters is that he knows himself to be observed. Too much because he has no need, in fact, of being so. In view of this, Bentham laid down the principle that power should be visible and unverifiable. Boom. That is important for me, okay? Power should always be visible and unverifiable. In a sense, I need to know that it's there, the guard tower, but unverifiable in the sense like I don't know somebody's in the guard tower, right? Think about surveillance cameras here. If you feel like you're being watched, but you don't know if somebody's watching the camera at that point, okay, how differently would you act? Whereas a security guard, you can tell when he's on break, you can tell when he's left the premises, etc. Okay. What I want to do is I want to jump down here, okay, and this is just my quick assertion. It is an important mechanism for it automatizes and disindividualizes power, okay, that's important. Power has its principles not so much in a person as in a certain concerted distribution of body, services, lights, gazes, etc., okay. What this does here, and this is what I want to talk about specifically, is there's a machinery that assures dissymmetry, right? There's an unbalancing here, right? Disequilibrium, difference. Consequently, so you're never comfortable in essence. Consequently, it does not matter who exercises power. Any individual taken almost at random can operate the machine, okay? In the absence of the director, his family, his friends, his visitor. Once this machine of surveillance is set in motion and you get a true Panopticon, this is the goal of the Panopticon, that it can work by itself. The prisoners are the ones doing all the work. Why? Because you've implemented in their mind what the act of constant surveillance, okay? let me wrap this up here. What I want you to do is I want you to think about these, thinking about the text questions, okay? Thinking about it further, and always, like I said, reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.